Riga was in better condition than Exhibition. Sometime, a long time ago, there was a big market somewhere above ground at this station. So among those who were able to run to the metro and save themselves from the bombs were a lot of traders from that market. The people here, ever since the beginning, had been an enterprising people, and with its proximity to other stations, other Hansa stations, Riga was given a certain prosperity. They had electric light, emergency lights like at Exhibition, and their patrols wore old camouflage, which was far more impressive than the quilted jackets we wore back at the barricade back home. The younger trader, whose name I still hadn't caught, led us to a tent, and it dawned on me that a swift return home was unlikely. With the main tunnel out of service and the service tunnel now overrun with watchmen, well, some poor bastards were going to have to head into that tunnel and clear the mutants out. And that work cost blood and bullets, two things not worth wasting in the metro. After making sure we were settled, and thanking us quietly whilst looking at his feet, the younger trader told Eugene and I farewell, saying he had to go and speak to the station's administration regarding developments. We took turns shaking his hand, exchanging pleasantries, and once he was gone, I turned, overwrought, and fell face first into my cot. I didn't want to sleep, but I was out of strength. Eugene laughed and poked at the fresh bandages Riga's resident doctor had wrapped around me. "I thought we were going to drink, huh?" I wanted to go down the list of what the doctor had diagnosed me with, bruises, cuts, a cracked rib or two, but ultimately all I warbled out of my mouth was a limp grunt. Eugene waved his hand and left the tent. "We'll go celebrate our tremendous victory once you've had your beauty sleep." I grunted again and flipped him the bird. "Good night, darling," he mocked as he left. Eugene's childish ramblings about Riga's hospitality lit thoughts of meat and women in my mind, and though it wet my mouth, now was the time to sleep and think about nothing. Noise started up beyond the walls of my tent, some residents setting up a feast in the middle of the platform, right where the campfire was. I couldn't resist. With a wince, I peeked outside. Several people were cleaning the floor and laying out a tarpaulin, and a little further away, they were cutting up a pig and sliding the meat onto steel wire to string it over the fire. The walls of the station were unusual. Not marble like at Exhibition, but lined with yellow and red tile. This combination must have looked fairly pretty and cheerful at one time, but now the glazed tiling was covered in a thick layer of soot and grease. But some of the old feeling of it was preserved. But the most interesting thing was, as I discovered later, was that at the other end of the station, half buried in the tunnel, was a real train, though its windows were blown in and its doors were gone. Locals were gathering, and I saw Eugene sat at a freshly erected table. I figured this feast was the hospitality he was talking about. Riga Station was only the first stop on my journey, but with this caravan going no further for obvious reasons, I thought a drink with Eugene wouldn't hurt. To celebrate our survival, you know. Maybe I was just scared of parting ways. Couldn't tell Eugene what it was that I was really doing, and though at one point he irritated me, now he was the closest thing to Sukhoi I still had. The vodka didn't help my fears of going on to Polis alone, but I was about to find myself with an unexpected and notorious partner. Half an hour later, the local leadership came out with the young trader from the caravan, and the first pieces of meat were put on the fire. Bottles of homemade vodka were pulled from storage and passed around, though, just like tea, it was made from mushrooms. I gnawed on the pork, licked the grease from my fingers, and smiled at my close spot beside the fire, as it filled me with a sense of coziness. Eugene said something about a girl back at exhibition, and then quietly slid some bullets across the table. "What's this?" "We could have died today, Artyon. I just feel like I owe you one." I fingered a bullet cautiously and eyed it. Currencies appear wherever people do, I suppose. I once read in one of Sukhoi's books that, on the surface, they used to give each other slips of paper as money. The paper itself was worthless, but it acted as a symbolic manifestation of the real currency of the day, and that was held in what was called a bank. Funny to think about that now. Paper. It seemed so primitive. Paper money. In the metro, Sukhoi said that there was a time early on where people still used that paper money, arbitrarily assigning value to it. But as years dragged on, that system fell away, and a sort of trading system came about, e.g., 2 rifles for 1 pig, etc., etc. The problem with that was, no one could agree on what each individual item was worth, so you'd find a handful of mushrooms worthless in one station and invaluable in another. A new system had to be devised. I rolled the cartridge around between my fingers, feeling the unexpected weight of it. Bullets. A crazy notion at first glance. Bullets became the universal currency for the metro. Like any good resource, they were finite, as no one had the means to create more down here, and with the advent of bandits and mutants, everyone needed them. The value of certain bullets was determined by their rarity. So, for example, 7.62mm were common enough that their value was low, but that was made up for in their numbers, whereas something like a .50 caliber was worth a great deal. The rounds Eugene had slid across to me were only 7.62s. "I didn't even do anything. If anything, I put you in danger by getting pulled out of the back of the car by that watchman. I can't take these, Eugene. You'll need them for your trip back home." My blood went cold as I realized my mistake, and saw that so had Eugene. "When I get back home? Aren't you coming?" No, I... My brain was groggy from the mushroom vodka, yet I tried my best to kick it into gear. Hunter's warning not to tell a soul from exhibition what I was doing rung in my ears as I watched Eugene's eyes reading my face. But there was no protest, no shock, nothing. Eugene only exhaled and said, "And you'll definitely need them. Take them, Artyon. I insist." Maybe he thought I was running away. Maybe he thought that the quiet, meticulous life at exhibition had become too much for me, as it had him. Eugene understood that. A need for freedom. And whilst that wasn't my intention, I used his assumption to my advantage. I took the bullets into my pocket and thanked him. And then came the stranger. An hour or two had passed when I met him. The feast was almost over, and drunk men pulled at the patchwork trousers of giggling short-haired women, as slowly the gathered dispersed. Eugene had left to his tent a while ago, I think hoping not to see much more of me until the morning, although he didn't know I expected to be gone by then. I was staggering through the quiet evening at Riga, trying to clear my head, when a voice from behind a tiled pillar spoke up and shook the last of the grogginess out of me. "Was it you who outran the watchman?" said the guy, and though I didn't know it yet, He had been watching me for the last several minutes from a distance. "Who told you that?" I answered his question with a question, looking more closely at him. He had a short haircut, he was unshaven, and under his rough and tough leather coat I could see a soft vest. Save for standing behind a pillar in the dark, there didn't seem to be anything particularly suspicious about him, though for some reason I wanted there to be. Nope, he looked like any old trader you'd find at Riga. "Who?" Yeah, it was that puppy of yours that said something," he said, nodding back towards the campfire, at the younger trader, who could now be seen unconscious, face buried in some woman's bosom. I fiddled with my earlobe and laughed nervously. "Well, yeah, it was me, I guess," I admitted. And although I guess I had planned to make some useful acquaintances at Riga, now that I was faced with an excellent opportunity to, I didn't feel much like it. "They call me Bourbon. What's your name?" I cocked an eyebrow, surprised. "Bourbon? What is that? The hell is a bourbon?" The man laughed and stepped into the light, wrapping a greasy arm around my shoulder and waving out a vision with his hand. "Kids today." No, my boy. "It is a drink from before the war. It put a fire in your belly and a smile on your face." I squirmed uncomfortably at his touch and stepped back, rubbing my elbow. "So which are you then? The smile or the fire?" Something flashed in Bourbon's eyes, but he measured himself with a crooked grin. "What about you? What do I call the boy that survived the Watchman?"
"Artyon."
Listen, Artyon.
And when are you going back?"
Bourbon seemed insistent, and it was making me suspicious.
"I don't know. If you heard what happened to me, then you know that the tunnel needs to be cleared before anyone can head back to exhibition. Why do you ask?"
I answered coolly, thinking it best to let him think I was eventually going to head home.
"Listen, I'm not all that much older than you, so you could speak to me more directly than that. You can drop the formality."
I have to say, it was the first time I had seen a man with as many wrinkles as Sukhoi and Hunter claim to be not much older than me. And that little quirk of Bourbon's ego made it difficult to focus on what he was saying.
"Basically, I have a proposal for you. Not for your whole group, but for you personally." "Me? Well, I need your help. You get it, yeah? It won't take that long."
I didn't get it at all. The guy was talking haltingly, and something about the way he pronounced his words made me wince inside.
"Listen, boy, listen. Don't get tense."
Bourbon sensed my feelings of mistrust and sought quickly to disperse them.
"Nothing dodgy? Come on, it's all above board. Well, almost all. Basically, this is it. A little while ago, some of our guys went up to market, and they went straight along the line, and they never got there. Only one of them came back, and now he's all jittery and crap. He came running back, covered in snot, howling like a baby. The rest, well, he didn't come back at all. And look, maybe they got out at another station or something, but I haven't heard anything, and nobody here has heard anything. So now, the situation has occurred where nobody wants to go along that line anymore. My theory, well, I reckon that basically it's the same thing as what happened to you. Maybe there's some breach in the tunnel somewhere, like watchmen or something, lurking around that tunnel."
Bourbon suddenly looked over his shoulder to make sure no one was listening.
"And the watchmen didn't get you. You get it? They could have eaten you alive. But no, they tossed you aside. You get what I'm saying?
I'm starting to, I said, though in truth uncertain.
Basically, I need to get up there. Past there, in fact. Up to Dry Station. And well, I don't know if I'll be able to deal with that many watchmen on my own. But maybe you'd be the one person around here who'd be interested in lending a hand. And who knows, I may not even be interested in you.
You, I muttered, you want me to help you through the tunnel?
Yeah, something like that.
Bourbon nodded in relief.
And there are a few more tunnels full of crap, you know. Help me out, get me to Dry Station, and I'll make it worth your while. I'll give you some guns, some bullets, and hell, my friends at Dry Station will even dust you off and send you back to exhibition.
I, though wanting to tell Bourbon and his offer to go to hell, realized that this was a way of getting out of Riga and closer to Polis without having to fuss about with any more problems. I'd almost been taken out by the watchmen before, but Bourbon was right. They did leave me for a time. And besides, the only reason I got dropped in the first place was because of that damn high-pitched ringing in my ears. Bourbon didn't say what it really was that he was getting at, but his proposed route would have us go through the accursed tunnel near Market. The tunnel of Eugene's story. I shivered, but if I got by Market, even as far as Dry Station, it was only a handful more stations till I'd be a stone's throw from Polis. With a quiet agreement, Bourbon gave me that sickening grin again and glanced at my bandages.
How are you anyway, my boy? I'd rest that if I were you. Go to your tent and sleep for a bit. Then I'll come and get you when we can leave after a while. In that time, do what you need to do to get ready and we'll go. Hell, write a note if you feel like it. If you can write, that is. So they don't send a search party after us. That would be a real bitch.
I headed back to my tent and thought of what to pack, though, thankfully, I hadn't even unpacked yet anyway. I saw Eugene snoring, mouth open, and I eased into my cot, planning on just closing my eyes for a few hours, until Bourbon came and got me. G'day guys, I hope you enjoyed that story and thank you so much for giving it a listen. Remember, if you want some more scary stories, you can go to the Scary Stories for Late Nights playlist. Duskbowl has been a fantastic project to work on, and remember, if you've got any fanfic or fan art or any just questions about the series, feel free to email me at duskbowl.fm@gmail.com. I love every single one of you, and you've made being a microtuber probably one of the best experiences of my life. I want to give special thanks to my patrons, of course, being Lady Nevermore, Skulk Queen, Catherine Gordon, The Curator, and Stephen Stevens. If you see them in the comments, please say g'day. And to all of you, I bid you logs of love and shit shippers.